It's Labor Day weekend already, and the kids are back in school on Tuesday. Sorry about that. I'm Charlie Sykes. Sunday Insight starts right now. Good morning and welcome to Sunday Insight. In the week that was, the Packers wrap up the preseason with a convincing win over the Chiefs. The Pack opens the regular season against the Seahawks on Thursday. President Obama plans to visit Milwaukee on Monday, but his party's candidate for governor, Mary Burke, won't be appearing with him. Instead, they'll meet privately. Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt finally tie the knot, and Russia invades Ukraine. You can decide what the bigger story was. A John Doe document dump includes documents that judges said should remain secret, but the media goes into a frenzy anyway. That probe is still shut down by two separate judges. But we start with the latest poll in the race for governor. Dead heat again. According to the Marquette University Law Poll, among registered voters, Governor Scott Walker leads Mary Burke 47.5% to 44.1%. But among likely voters, Burke has the edge, 48.6% to Walker's 46.5%. 54% of Wisconsinites think the state is headed in the right direction, but they don't necessarily give Walker credit. 47% approve of Governor Walker's job performance, 47% disapprove. On jobs, voters broke evenly, 45% saying that Walker would do a better job creating jobs, 45% said that Burke would. The poll also revealed a big gender gap, with Burke leading among women by a margin of 56% to 38%. In contrast, Walker leads among men by 17 points, 57 to Burke's 40%. Joining me on our panel this morning, the Milwaukee Community Journal's Michael Holt, political consultant Mary Jo Boss, political strategist Lynn DeBruin, and the managing editor of RightWisconsin.com, Colin Roth. Okay, Colin, what is the most important number in the poll?
I think the most important number is 54%, those who say that Wisconsin is heading in the right direction. Walker's job approval number sits at 47, but he has an opportunity to connect with those voters who believe the state's heading in the right direction.
Okay, what did you read on this, Linda Brown?
Well, to me, I think the read is clear. It's a dead heat, and the bottom line, like all the pundits are saying, is whoever gets their people out to the polls. Yeah. I don't think the 5% undecided voters are going to decide this, barring some, because I don't think they're all going to swing one way or the other. I think they're going to be as divided. So,
okay,
go ahead.
Mary Jo Boss.
Well, I think Lynn is right. That turnout is going to be huge in this race, but 35% of people polled said they don't know enough about Mary Burke and her policies to make a decision. If Scott Walker's campaign can tell the voters, can message that himself, if he can define her, he can win.
Okay, why hasn't he done that yet?
I think he has to some degree, but he's working right now on getting things in place. He's going to be coming out with new messages.
Well, that's what he says. Okay, Michael Holt.
You know, I think one of the defining strategy changes I've seen in the last couple of weeks has been Scott Walker has stopped attacking Mary Burke, stopped linking her to Jim Doyle as Commerce Secretary, and has really started touting his own record now. I mean, that's a defining change in his campain, which
they're going to continue to link Mary Burke with Jim Doyle. I think the most extraordinary number in this poll is the fact that there appears to be an enthusiasm gap favoring Democrats. I have not seen this anywhere else in the country. Generally, Republicans do better among likely voters in an election like this than among registered voters. So how do you explain the fact that, I don't know, that Republicans are not as jazzed about this election as Democrats are?
Well, there's a couple theories the governor put forth, and a lot of people agree that there's kind of a sense of fatigue among conservative voters, that they've had to, go out for these elections, these various elections and recall elections time after time after time. I think there's an element of that. I think there's also an element where the John Doe is taking an effect. I think the messages of lagging job growth are taking an effect. And I also think the opportunity is there for Governor Walker to lay out more of a second-term agenda.
I think in a bad economy or a slow economy like this one, the issue is always jobs, jobs. And Scott Walker has not gone as far as he should have in the jobs area for a lot of voters. So I think this kind of calms some of the Republican enthusiasm down. They're not real thrilled with what he's done, so they're not as happy to go out there. On the other hand, I don't want to discount. He had a lot of loyalists come out in his recall election, and I'm not going to just jump and assume that they're going to stay home on November.
Again, we talk about turnout models. This poll seems to be assuming a presidential election turnout model, the kind of vote that we had in 2012. I think that's highly unlikely. That generally you have a different electorate that turns out in an off-year election. If that's the case, Is that better news for Scott Walker?
I think actually it is. I think many people assume this was a little Democrat heavy. I personally would favor the registered voters. When you poll, a lot of people don't want to admit they don't vote or they're not going to vote. I would say in all likelihood we will have a slightly lower Democrat vote than what is here, and it will favor the Republicans, and it could.
I think what this poll says to me is that the #1 problem facing the Walker campaign is complacency. He's got to wake up the base. The base has got to get as engaged as they were back in 2010, 2011, 2012. Maybe there is a little bit of fatigue. But I also agree with Colin that 54% number is crucial because it would suggest that there are, 6 or 7% of the electorate that thinks that things are going in the right direction in Wisconsin. They like what's going on in Wisconsin, but they haven't connected it to Scott Walker. Scott Walker has got to remind people, hey, the reason things are moving in this direction are some of the things that we have done that might have been controversial. So what is your glass half full, and what has your glass half empty this week? Let's go around the table. Michael Holt, you're first.
Well, my glass is half empty because the injury bug has hit the Green Bay Packers again, with several key players lost for the season. My glass is half full because it looks like they won't need them anyway to make a bid for the Super Bowl.
Let's see, Mary Jo Boss.
But my glass is half full because the latest John Doe document dump again showed that Governor Walker and his campaign did nothing wrong, much less illegal. It is half empty because the fact does not stop the media from peddling their myth that somehow he did.
Yeah, Linda Bruin.
Well, my glass is half full because if the election was held tomorrow, the most likely voters would elect Mary Burke governor and Susan Hopp attorney general. But my glass is half empty because the election is in November and anything can happen between now and then.
And probably will. Colin Roth.
I'll return to what we were talking about. My glass is half full because 54% of respondents in the new Marquette poll say Wisconsin is heading in the right direction. My glass is half empty because some of those voters aren't giving Governor Scott Walker the credit for putting the state on this positive path.
Well, my glass is half full because last week I took a couple of days off and finished the entire season 4 of Game of Thrones. It's half empty because season 5 is still a long way off. Next on Sunday Insight, what's in the cards for the proposed Kenosha Casino? Well, a decision is not expected until after the election, but the contentious debate over a new massive casino in Kenosha heated up last week. The Forest County Potawatomi refused to make their required $25 million payment to the state, saying they would hold on to the money in case the Walker okays the Kenosha deal. Under the compacts negotiated by former Governor Jim Doyle, the state is required to compensate the tribe if it loses money from any new competitor. That could cost the state hundreds of millions of dollars. Meanwhile, the new Marquette poll shows that nearly 60% of voters now favor the new casino in Kenosha. So, Mary Jo Boss, what is the state of play here? Why did the is the Potawatomi strong-arm tactic going to be effective?
I don't think it'll be effective in the way they want it to be. The background of it is they almost seem to be saying they are protected in the compacts from any competition, while at the same time the compacts clearly indemnify them from any loss of funds. So if they're protected from competition, why would they be indemnified in the event of competition?
Okay, but
it doesn't make sense.
Well, I agree. I mean, I thought it was bad PR. On the other hand, here you have the state, which has some lagging revenues coming in. If in fact it will blow a $200 million hole in the state budget, aren't they basically? Isn't their threat carry a certain amount of weight? Don't do that. I mean, don't do that, Governor Walker. Otherwise, we're going to screw up your state finances.
Well, they're threatening Walker, but they're sending a horrible message to the public. They're saying we basically have, we're printing money here, and we're going to withhold from the state. It's a bad idea.
Michael Holt.
Well, the governor and to a certain extent Mary Burke are no-win situations. If you support the expansion, then you lose support from Potawatomi. If you don't, then you lose some support, some votes down in Racine, Kenosha. Incidentally, what is Mary Burke's position on this?
She won't say either. The bottom line here is the Potawatomi.
Thanks for jumping in there.
They're upping the stakes on it. They're upping the pressure, and I don't understand why the governor hasn't made a decision on this. He needs to take a leadership. Other than the obvious political one, but the bottom line is he's the governor of the state of Wisconsin, and he's running out of excuses to delay it. And the one thing that the Potawatomi and the Menominee are united in is the fact that they want a decision now. That it's been over a year since the Bureau of Indian Affairs approved this thing. you know, it's time for them to announce their decision.
Before the election?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, Colin Roth.
Well, I kind of doubt it'll happen before
Yeah.
the election, and if it does, it could be a very high stakes game. But I think I would hope that when it comes down to paying their bills, the Potawatomis would know that they have to, that this isn't an option that they can just withhold.
But that's the key thing. And I was actually shocked when the local newspaper actually editorialized in favor of them playing this particular game, the strong arm tack. I mean, I know they're in the tank for the Potawatomi, but really, now I've been kind of wishy-washy on all this, but I was personally offended about that because the rest of us have to pay our bills.
Right.
You know, if we owe money to the state, trust me, I don't get to decide when I'm going to do this because the state might not do something I want. So you have the Potawatomi, once again, showing that they think they are above the law, throwing their weight around, trying to bully the state. Now, in the past, they got away with this because Jim Doyle gave away the store. Jim Doyle basically put the taxpayers on the hook for this very, very sweet deal. And I'm inclined to think that it would be a rather dramatic moment for Scott Walker to go down to Kenosha and say, you know what? I need to stand by the taxpayers. We are not going to be bullied. I am not going to be held, you know, these decisions are not going to be held ransom. We are going to create these jobs. We are going to open this up and we're going to work this thing out. I don't know that he's going to do that because of the budget issue. But if anything, I think it's provided a little bit of reason for people to say, let's stand up against these folks. Now, here's the other question I had. The Marquette poll suggests there's been a rather dramatic shift of opinion in favor of the Kenosha Casino. Why?
I think people want the jobs. I think they're looking for the jobs, and I think they should pin Mary Burke down on this. Like Michael said, where is she? She should be asking Mark Murata, her finance guy,
as long as the governor won't say his position, she's going to be able to skate as well.
Oh,
and
you know what Mary Burke's going to say?
I think people are going to be just as are frustrated over, you know, look at the example this sets. Not only does the governor refuse to take a position, but so does his challenger. It's a pox on both houses when the people that are running for high office won't take a leadership position because they're too afraid of an election.
Well, I think at this point, if Governor Walker does announce that he's approving this casino, it would be a significant net plus for him in Racine and Kenosha. Mary Burke would do exactly the predictable thing. She will oppose. She will say the exact opposite. And I think people will understand she'll say the exact opposite. But in terms of the creation of jobs, in terms of the creation of economic development, in terms of the bipartisan support in Racine and Kenosha, and that's what's interesting about this, the way there seems to be a consensus for me, I think it would be a net positive. The governor, of course, then does have to worry about the fact that the Potawatomi are going to withhold these payments and will be indemnified. And the news media, rather than say that this is irresponsible behavior, will endorse them. You may not want to hear it, but we're going to tell you anyway. Let's hand out some unsolicited advice. Michael Holt, you're first.
Well, my unsolicited advice is to city officials. If you want to quell tensions between police and the community, expedite equipping police officers with vests or eyeglasses, eye cameras like this one. It only costs $30.
Mary Jo Boss.
My unsolicited advice is for the Brewers, who are facing their toughest challenger when St. Louis comes to town later this week. Unleash the hounds, and by that I mean more Hank.
Linda Bruin.
Well, we just talked about this, but my advice is to Governor Walker. Nobody believes your excuses anymore for why you haven't made a decision on the Kenosha Casino. It's time to be a leader and announce your decision.
Colin Roth.
To President Obama, at this dangerous juncture in world events, please don't tell our enemies that you don't have a strategy.
Okay, I basically would say the same thing. Mr. President, if you don't have a strategy for dealing with international terrorists, you shouldn't tell them. Here's a freebie, though. If Michael Holt walks in and he's wearing those glasses, be careful because they have a camera in them. Next on Sunday Insight, does LaborFest have a future? President Obama plans a trip to Milwaukee for tomorrow's LaborFest, an event that has been so wildly popular that it was actually canceled last year. And that raises the question, what exactly is the state of organized labor these days? Nationally, only 6.7% of private sector workers are unionized. About 35% of government workers belong to unions, but this year the Supreme Court curbed the power of some of those public sector unions when it barred them from collecting dues from non-member employees. So, what is the state of unions on Labor Day 2014, Michael Holt?
I think they're on life support. I think, well, they're actually, particularly the government labor unions, are dead in Wisconsin. But nationally, they've lost a lot of their clout. This is their last hurrah. You know, they're getting solidly behind Mary Burke for one reason and one reason only. She hopefully will revitalize these unions. Nationally, nationally, they need to follow the president and support all Democrats for the next upcoming election. Otherwise,
okay. Speaking of the president and Mary Burke is not going to be appearing with the president again. This is the second time.
Yeah.
What is the you buying that?
Well, since I criticized her the last time when she left him on the turf, you know, I think it's disingenuous to a certain extent. You know, if I were her, I would be hugging him, kissing him on stage, as long as Michelle doesn't find out.
Okay, why do you think she's not doing that? The President of the United States comes to your state. This is the second time.
Well,
she was too busy to
privately.
Yeah, privately.
Supposedly.
Okay, privately means I don't want my picture taken with you. I don't want any footage of me on stage with you.
See, the question is it his decision or her decision? Does she actually think Obama would hurt her?
Okay,
or help her?
whose decision?
Oh, I think this is absolutely Mary Burke's decision, and it comes from what we saw in the polls, that Obamacare is largely disapproved of in this state, and President Obama is underwater in a state that he won in 2012. This is a decision that's being made by candidates all around the country that they don't want to be seen with this guy. He's toxic.
Okay, here's my question, though. If you're the president and you know that she doesn't want to be seen with you, why do you pick to come to Wisconsin on Labor Day? I mean, I can imagine the discussion being, well, we'll go there, we'll help out Mary Burke. Well, Mary Burke doesn't want to be seen with you. Okay, let's go to, I don't know, Colorado. We'll go someplace else.
Because Wisconsin is still a crucial state.
Right,
You know?
and he didn't make the decision based on what Mary Burke was going to do. I think that sends a message to Mary Burke as well from the president. He's coming into the state of Wisconsin because Wisconsin's a crucial state in the next presidential election, and because he supports and believes in labor unions,
and
not because of Mary Burke.
And because we have some of the country's best golf courses. Mary Jo Boss.
I think the real reason is here is because, as we talked about in the previous topic, turnout is what's going to win this gubernatorial race. He is here to rally the forces. Whether or not Mary Burke is there, he's here to get people out, to get them. They're more of a political machine now.
But except the protocol, the argument that they're using is this is not a political trip, that this is an official trip, so he can't have it both ways. He's either here for a presidential official visit, or he's here to rally the troops.
He's not here for a presidential visit. He's
here
to rally
the troops. He's here for a political visit to rally the troops to get out and vote for Mary Burke. He'd be coming in October. If he comes back in October, I would agree with you.
Do you think he is going to come back? Now, because that's the spin, that he's going to be coming back.
I think he should come back in October. I think he should.
And for Mary Burke,
because you need to get out Democratic voters, so he needs to come back in
I
October.
think the chances are about 50-50. What is it that you don't get this week? Let's go around the table. Michael Holt, you're first.
What I don't get is why nearly 6 months after the police killing of Dante Hamilton at Red Arrow Park, police continue to refuse to release the name of the officer who shot the unarmed man 13 times.
Mary Jo Boss.
What I don't get is why Barry Goldwater's son would inject himself into Wisconsin Electric's power debate and go against everything his father believed in as a conservative by pushing for massive ratepayer subsidies for solar power rather than allowing the free market to dictate consumer choice in energy.
Linda Bruin.
Well, so far this year, Russia has annexed Crimea, invaded the Ukraine, and also wants Moldova and Georgia. So what I don't get is Europe's tepid reaction. Letting Nazi Germany annex the Rhineland, Austria, and Czechoslovakia didn't satisfy Germany. So why is Europe so willing to believe that Russia will stop at the Ukraine?
Colin Roth.
What I don't get is why President Obama is so gung-ho to unilaterally institute a carbon tax when Australia just got rid of theirs after 2 years of driving up energy rates.
Well, what I don't get, okay, I actually do get why Mary Burke doesn't want to be seen with the president who has been tanking in the polls. What I don't get is why she thought that anybody would buy her bogus story that she wasn't avoiding being seen with President Obama. Next on Sunday Inside, our panel picks the winners and losers of the week, but first, here's your morning news update. It's time for our panel to pick the winners and losers of the week. Michael Holt, you're first.
The winners, the Potawatomis. They show they have the winning hand in the high-stakes casino gaming in Wisconsin. Skip the loser. According to my reading of the Bible, heaven was not going to be a very crowded place. But I know my mother will have a reservation there. Happy birthday, Mom. Love you.
Mary Jo Boss.
My winner this week is Henry Tyson and St. Marcus School. All they wanted to do is give more poor black kids a good education. And in return, they got demonized by MPS and jerked around by the city of Milwaukee, who tried to block them from expanding. But St. Marcus never gave up and opened their doors to 100 additional kids this week. My losers are the lazy and irresponsible reporters who abuse First Amendment freedoms to violate the Fourth and Fifth Amendment rights of others.
Linda Bruin.
8-year-old Noah Aldrich recently pushed and pulled his wheelchair-bound little brother all the way through a grueling triathlon. He knew he couldn't win if he took his brother along, but he did it anyway, which makes him a real winner. My losers are the parents and the shooting range owners who actually thought it was a good idea to teach a 9-year-old girl to shoot a fully automatic Uzi. She accidentally killed her instructor, and she'll be psychologically damaged for life thanks to the irresponsibility of the adults around her.
Colin Roth.
My winners this week are football fans. It's been a long wait, but college football kicked off this weekend and the Packers start this week. My losers this week are Republicans, who according to a new poll are lacking in enthusiasm to vote this fall. Get in the game, folks. A lot is at stake in this election.
Well, there are gaffes, and then there are gaffes. President Obama's admission that he did not have a strategy for dealing with ISIS was so damaging because it confirmed what we've suspected for a very long time, that he hasn't had a strategy for dealing with our enemies for the last 6 years. Winner, Congressman Paul Ryan, whose new book, The Way Forward, made the New York Times bestseller list this weekend. More cheesehead domination. Thanks for joining us and joining my radio show Monday morning on News Radio 620 WTMJ from 8:30 until noon. Have a great Labor Day weekend.